How's it going, everybody? This is Aaron Price, CEO of Tech United New Jersey. Great to be with you live on this Friday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Very excited about today's conversation where we're going to go through a variety of topics that can affect entrepreneurs, especially as they get into an exit or perhaps multiples. So very pleased to welcome today Warren Abkowitz, partner at KPMG. Warren, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
Where are you joining us from today?
Marlboro, New Jersey. Monmouth County.
Excellent. Well, I'm in Hoboken, and it's good to have you with us. So you deal with family offices, high net worth individuals on a variety of planning. Why don't you explain a little bit about your area of focus?
Sure. I have a very deep background, 30 years plus of public accounting experience with a law degree as well. So we bring a lot of deep planning to family offices and high net worth individuals that have sort of worldwide expertise or exposure, as well as local and domestic in New Jersey, the family, on how to minimize their federal taxes, minimize their New Jersey state taxes, and work through the estate planning side as well as charitable planning, and try to bring that all together through the resources of a large firm like KPMG.
And maybe stating the obvious here, but why do people need a lot of help? What sorts of issues do they encounter when someone comes into sizable wealth? In our community in particular, it tends to be on an exit with a tech company or investment. But what are the issues that come up that require expertise?
Sure, great question. From the economic side, obviously you want to always start and maximize the amount of wealth or dollars you can get on a transaction. So you need to make sure you have the right advisors from that perspective, as long with counsel to make sure things go as planned and outlined in the documents, of course. And then on the tax side, it's our job to follow that, make sure the plan is executed again as expected, and all the way through from the individual side. And a lot of individuals don't want to pay state taxes if they could avoid it, and a lot of our job is help managing through that from a total family perspective. And sometimes you can commingle the estate planning in with the family planning. So, and the income tax planning. And then if you really want to go full circle, then we'll bring the charitable planning into it as well, and set up a foundation, or donor advised funds are pretty popular as well.
Just for context here, at what level of income or wealth should people start to think about working with someone like you?
Also another great question. It's I don't have a bright line number to say 5 million, 10 million. It's more around the complexity of the transaction. Is it simple? Is it straightforward? Or is it more complex? And are there more issues that arise and develop as they go? But 5 or 10 million is a number we use. We don't just serve as billionaire clients. We have a whole host, and half our practice are 5 and 10 million net worth individuals that need the same help, right? They still want to save taxes and maximize their estate planning or be charitable as well. So so we don't just target the ultra wealthy. Anybody's quote unquote high net worth individual, we're happy to work with. And
so, what are steps that entrepreneurs should take in preparing for an exit of their business, where in most cases or many cases there's a significant boost of income or wealth? What are steps that they could take to make sure that they are appropriately set up to minimize some of those tax burdens?
Sure. There's two dynamics to that. From the estate planning side, there's a lot of steps you could take in setting up family trusts. And the earlier you do that, the more value you potentially get out of a person's estate. So there's a lot of planning done around that. Separate from that is the income tax planning, but it's separate but yet commingled. So you need to work on them together to be able to maximize that. And the more lead time you have, of course, the easier it is for people like myself to help manage through that process. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more complex, and the way the business is structured, the way the family, where they are, where they're living, where they expect to live, right? So there's a lot of longer term planning that comes into it. So the longer runway we have, the better runway we have to execute it.
And with more of a runway, like what's a 12 months plus is a good time. If you think you're 12 months out from a transaction, is that a good time to talk to you? 5 years out? Like when's the right time?
Yeah, our sort of standard answer is the longer the better. 5 years out is great because if you're interested in qualified small business stock exclusions, then you need a 5 year. So we'd love to be involved with a runway like that, so we can help clients figure out which way to go. And there's a big dynamic sort of from the corporate side down as opposed to the individual side up. But it's, should I be a C corp or not? And there's a lot that goes into that. And C corps pay lower rates at the moment. But what does that look like if upon sale? And then there's a lot of modeling that goes into that, and then our tax analysis through with that. So if you want to be a C corp, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. So we help model that, go through that. But if you can take advantage of the qualified small business stock exclusion, at least for federal purposes at this point, you can get 10 times your basis or up to $10 million, the greater of, as a federal exclusion. So if you think you can operate as a C corp and your potential exit as a C corp works for you, who your potential buyers would be, then it's potentially a great way to go. But there's a lot of steps to get through and make sure you maintain that, as opposed to maybe a more traditional way would be a flow through structure, and then selling maybe the assets through that, which buyers tend to want to buy. So we've helped clients a week before a transaction, and that's fine too. We're prepared for we have great teams that are used to doing it, as long as meet our firm's internal standards and quality control and independence, of course. But we're happy to help clients that just need help. But the longer the runway, the better. But on average, if somebody needs a date, I'd say at least 12 months. So you can plan, you can move things, you could create another company, you could create something in another jurisdiction. So you give everybody a little leeway to execute that plan.
What are the states that you see as the most friendly for these kinds of transactions, where people are setting up the entities for their holdings?
Yeah, there's the few easy ones are Florida and Texas and maybe Nevada as well. The Northeast, there's a little bit of a misnomer from the Trump tax cuts that the elimination of the SALT deduction created all these higher taxes, and the elimination of that deduction. So we ran some projections years ago, and a high net worth individual with ordinary income didn't really pay that much more tax because they were typically on the AMT, so their ordinary income tax was 10. So we really go through the details to highlight to our clients to show them what would happen under different scenarios. But an easier analysis purely on the exit side is if you're going to get $10 million, and do you want to save 10%, 11% tax in New Jersey? You structure around that, and is it a reality, right? Some people say, "Oh, of course I do," but they love New Jersey. They're here in New Jersey. Their kids are in New Jersey, so we tend to work around New Jersey. But we also work, moving trusts around in South Dakota, Delaware. But and then some families, they would like to go to California. I know they're not necessarily a lower tax state, but some people really like that, or Colorado as well. Some people hate Florida, and some of my clients won't do it, and they'll pay more tax, and they'd rather be New York or Colorado because they're a skier, for example.
And some of the strategies that you employ, and correct me if I'm wrong here, some require actually physically changing residence, right? And are there strategies where you could set up a trust in another state, but you don't actually have to physically move there?
Correct. There are ways to do that in New Jersey. Some states are more aggressive or have shut certain things down. But again, it depends upon your structure, and it depends upon your needs. Do you want the asset in your state permanently, temporarily? Is it a true gift for income tax purposes? So there's multiple levels of gifts and planning that could be done.
Yeah.
And do you want to just create sort of a deferral, right? We've created that as well, to create a deferral recognition till they are quote unquote out of the state. But like I said, a bunch of them come back, so it's not as easy as it used to be.
I want to come back to the qualified small business stock exemption, QSBS. That's an issue we're working on very aggressively at the moment, and we have reasons to be hopeful that New Jersey will adopt this policy. But can you share more with folks about what that exclusion is and what they need to do to qualify, so that should that happen here, well, regardless, we even for the audience beyond New Jersey, There's 45 states that do recognize it in some way. New Jersey is one of 5 that doesn't. But for those who are out of the state, what should they know about it? For those who, are crossing their fingers like we are that it might happen here, what should they be doing to make sure that they qualify?
Sure. The most important thing is to capitalize it with, I believe, under $50 million and have a 5-year holding period. That's the key. Most people don't have and make sure you can maintain that. So to set up a C Corp and then have a 4.5-year holding period and potentially pay C Corp taxes and then have an asset sale and create a double tax isn't really going to help you. So there's a lot of assumptions that you really need to test thoroughly with the investor group and the founders to make sure that that's ultimately the proper exit. But the 5-year holding period is big. So you have to be a C Corp and you have to have a 5-year holding period are the key. And there's some nuances around the financial services industry and technology. And KPMG actually provides opinions and studies around that. So if a company's setting up and that is one of their goals, we'll come in with one of our corporate teams and prepare an opinion and an analysis of what has to happen day one and then how that's maintained through those 5 years. Because you could do a subsequent raise and you could do some things in the middle there that screw that up. So we're very sensitive on getting to clients early enough so that they understand that. Because like I said, some of them say, oh, okay, I set it up at 5 million in, I'm good. And then 2 years later, there's another capital raise and they get diluted or something happens. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't know I had to reevaluate it. So we have a group of experts that will come in and provide that analysis. And then even, like I said, update it as well. So if there is another transaction, they'll frame what can work or won't work if you get another buyer and it's too large or too, you exchange your shares or depending upon how the transaction is structured. But it is important. And of course, we've had the other side that we get clients or they come to us and say, oh, I'm selling my stock and this and that. And we'll say, is it QSB stock? And it's like, well, what's that? And then it's like, oh, but we can go backwards. And sometimes they do qualify and they didn't even know. So we'll use the same team, if you will, prepare that study, go in, get the documents, maybe a little harder if it's like 6 or 7 years ago, but we'll get that documentation, prepare an opinion and enable, in some cases, enable the shareholders to exclude a large portion of that gain.
You think it would be meaningful to the entrepreneurial and investment community if this policy is updated in New Jersey?
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of lower taxes, tax credits, lower taxes, exemptions. Not to get into sort of political or social policy, but using taxes to help investment, we know it works. That's really not up for conversation. So there is a lot of investment in the Northeast, whether it's New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, even a little more north in Massachusetts. So having the ability to have investors structure transactions that do live here, right? We want them to stay in the state and stay local and be able to invest and continue that way. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same as the federal exemption, but any incentive in my mind is important. It just helps people and businesses these days get off the ground and save some more money, which then, as you know, right, which then gets reinvested. So I think it's a great idea for the state to continue to do that and other planning for the state for its residents.
We are, as I said, hoping to see progress here. We've had over 150 entrepreneurs sign on, and we're seeing legislators supportive. I mean, a lot of questions, but some of them this is the first time they've ever heard of that acronym, but they're generally interested and seemingly supportive. So you'll hear a lot from us should that policy change. On other expiring tax policies, especially with the change of political climate, what should people be aware of, and are there strategies you're encouraging people to employ during the period of while there's some unknown?
Sure. The easiest one to do is to utilize your current lifetime exemption from an estate planning perspective. I know a lot of people, especially middle-aged to younger families, are a little sensitive about setting up trusts and giving money away to their family members or family trusts until they maybe get a little older. But under the current rules, and of course they may change and probably will, depending upon the election and the next 6 to 12 months after that. But under the current rules right now, at the end of 2025, the lifetime exemption goes from approximately 13 million to 6.5 million. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's really important for our families and clients to take advantage of that. And there are many different types of trust structures and gifts that could be made. And there is ways of spouses, and you could set up, I won't use the word reciprocal, but one for one spouse, one for another, with different terms and conditions, but be able to have spouses down the road access some of those funds if need be. But it's really important. We tell every client to take advantage of it, because if you don't and then it goes away, you've kind of lost it. And at the moment, tax rate's 40%. It's a lot of money to not use to lose from your estate, if you will, and potentially twice for two spouses. So that's the biggest. And then the other thing too, I'll plug the lawyers for a second. This expires at the end of next year, so there's already a thinking going on that the closer we get to that time, there's going to be a run to go to have them write all these trust documents and effectuate these gifts. So typically the lawyers get really busy in year end. Now it's probably going to be mid next year, somewhere through. So we really are pushing our clients to talk to us and talk to counsel to get these trusts drafted, even to draft it and not fund it. So you could always fund it on 12/20 of next year if you choose, but to figure out who the trustee is, whose assets are going in there, which assets for which children. Do you want separate trusts for each kid? Do you want one combined trust, the generation skipping trust? There's so many nuances that go into it. So to sit back and say, oh, I'll just do it at the end of next year, it's going to be a big run on the attorneys to try to get this done, which has happened some years ago. So we're talking from experience on trying to get ahead of that. So that's the biggest. The other big one too that people haven't really focused on is the overall income tax rate. At the moment, the highest rate is 37%, 39.6 at the end of 25, or for 26 if nothing is done. So it'll be a little unique. Clients are starting to talk about it, but not fully there yet. But middle of next year, we'll be talking about selling assets to save on the taxes potentially. Now, again, that's ordinary income and short-term rate. The long-term rate is obviously 20% plus the net investment income tax. So that's obviously a big part of that analysis. But if you can move things around or pay bonuses earlier or delay a deduction you want to delay a deduction into a higher tax year and accelerate income in a lower tax. So a lot of that will be going on, and our planning, we're touching that with clients, but it's a little premature. But January, February, March, I'm sure we'll be deep into that, going through all our clients. So those are the two big ones to highlight. There's something called the domestic production activities deduction, Section 199A. That is important as well. I don't want to overlook that. It's the business you're in. Some businesses qualify, some do not. But if your business qualifies for that and you take advantage of it, it's a 20% deduction with certain limitations. At the moment, that sunsets and goes away as well. And if you're in a business that you could utilize that, then that's a big tax increase for you. And it's supposed to be, obviously, as I mentioned before, a social benefit to the country to provide a benefit for a business that produces products here in the United States. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out, whether it gets extended or not. And a lot of planning went into that to enable clients to take advantage of it where we are now. But so the ones, especially larger ones that use that, we're very sensitive on how that plays out. And that's obviously a huge tax increase coming to those individuals if it doesn't get extended.
When you talk about the timeline to set up some of these trusts and things, again, do people need a year? They need 6 months? I'm sure there are attorneys that scramble to make things happen, but what's the appropriate amount of time for some of this complex planning?
Yeah, I like 6 months. I think that's long enough to deal and talk to your family. It's a good time to evaluate your will also. So you probably want to bring that in. You want to potentially update your living will, your healthcare proxy, and one other that for your children as well. They've now, people are getting older. The kids are out of school now; they're adults, legally. So getting a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney for them, has been more and more important for our clients to have. And hopefully, God forbid, they never need to use it, but If something happens to their kid and their child and they're in the hospital and the hospital can't talk to them because they're an adult now and they don't have these papers in place. So we are highlighting that to our clients as well. And again, hopefully they never use it, but it's a good time to go through that. So 6 months is really a good time to lay all this out. And you don't want to be rushed. You want to think about it. You want to speak to the spouse and make sure that the plans are on the same page, the timing. Finding a trustee is not an easy thing these days. There's obviously big banks that do it. There's some smaller banks, but finding a good trustee these days is not as easy as it has been. And then there's also some taxation issues with regard to the trustee. So if you set up a trust in an out-of-state trust, but you use an in-state trust, you can maybe wind up messing up some of your state tax planning. So finding a trustee isn't always as easy as it. I'll just use my friend, or I'll use JP Morgan. So there's a lot to go into that. So just the whole concept of the whole trust and planning and laying it out, it takes some time.
What are like the number, maybe the top three things when you bring on a new client, perhaps that was working with someone else? What are the most common? I mean, you've brought up several sort of relatively easy things to do or things to be thinking about, but what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people walk in the door with when they come see you?
Great question. On the corporate side, as we mentioned, not taking advantage of the proper state rules, whether it's sourcing, tax credits. New Jersey, for example, changed source this past year. A lot of people didn't know that or weren't focused on it. So there's a lot of planning that could be done around that.
Warren, you broke up, at least for me, for 1 second. What was the issue that changed that people weren't aware of?
Oh, sorry. State sourcing for partnerships.
Yeah.
New Jersey used to source based on where the service is provided. Now it's based on where the customer is. So it's market-based sourcing for service partnerships. So that's a big change. Paying attention to it and the client's not aware of it, you'll kind of keep doing it the same way you've been doing it all along. So that's very important with regard to planning and with multiple investors and partial sales. It's even more important now to those strategic investors to make sure, not just to minimize the taxes, to make sure it's being done right. So we're very sensitive about that. And we bring a very coordinated approach. I like to say we bring top down as well as bottom up. So a lot of accountants are focused on the business, but my job at KPMG is to focus on the individuals and work with the business team. So I'll raise that question and say, well, why are we sourcing this to New Jersey? Or why is this done? Or can we set up another company offshore or move something around? Or can we set up a trust and do things a certain way? So not just the compliance seems to be getting more and more complex. It's the planning around that and taking advantage these new rules and evaluating that. So we do a full checkup on clients when we onboard them from, like I said, both sides. State planning side is big, as I mentioned, and then the business side, the R&D credits are big, especially in New Jersey. There's a lot of companies that take advantage of that, and those rules have become complex, and there's been some issues with regard to current deductions for that. So we have a team that also focuses on that to make sure that they're getting the best deductions and credits that are available to them.
Can you touch just for a moment on the R&D credit in New Jersey? I know it's the state's eager to make sure people are aware and leverage it. Can you just spend a moment on what that is and how people can take advantage of that credit?
Yeah, it's typically a percentage of the federal credit. So as long as you're doing it for federal purposes, they kind of piggyback that. A lot of people don't know about that. And it's not, huge dollars compared to the federal, but when you compare federal and state, it's even more money for them for the Jersey, source income, if you will. So it's not nothing, it's something to focus on. Yeah. New Jersey has, a few other manufacturing credits that we're very sensitive to, and it's important that, angel investor tax credit that's available. So a lot of firms, either it's not worth the effort or aren't focused on it. So we try to, as I said, we'll go in full analysis and say, has anybody mentioned A, B, C, D, and with them with the clients and see what works or what doesn't. And in some cases, you can go back, amend returns, and get refunds. We've done that a few times as well. So just depends on the facts of what the client does, and then sometimes we help them, kind of move left or right to be eligible to obtain certain credits or change their business model a little bit, or their, I should say, operations, not their model.
Yeah, and the angel investor tax credit is one that also we are looking to see the state increase that credit. It's the national average of tax credits, angel investor tax credits, is 34%. New Jersey's is 20 or 25 for minority-run businesses. We're looking to push that to 35 and 40 for minority-run businesses. And so we're seeing some traction there. I think that actually we may even have a policy change before the year's out. So again, we talk actively to investors who also are not aware of these things. And so we want to make sure that people take advantage of these credits. It's, you write a $100,000 check into a business, you can get back $35,000. That's a sizable decrease of your risk and increase of your IRR. So it's not just, these things have meaningful impact. So appreciate the work that you're doing. I guess the last question is for people who are, maybe younger entrepreneurs who are just getting started, maybe just raising their first round of seed capital, really nowhere near there's a level of wealth at the moment. What advice do you give them about, how to think through their long-term planning and anything they should set up practically in the short term to make sure that when they walk in the door, at your office, you don't say, you got 15 out of 20 things wrong here. How do people best set up for future success, even if they're not, potential clients today?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, but generally, the most important thing is their structure, whether it's a flow through or C corp, and how that would work. So you need to kind of model that out and see. And we were very open to people even just calling us, asking us questions and basic thoughts. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a full deep dive, so people are unsure about that, but it's important. Partnerships, LLCs are easier to manage from a legal perspective and a business perspective versus an S corp or a C corp. But it's important to get it right early on. So we're very focused on those startups that start the LLCs, and we'll have free sessions. We have webinars all over KPMG's website, and we have family office Fridays and different things that we provide free advice to our clients. And I'm happy to speak to anybody that has any questions, whether from your network or outside, and just give them the basics of how the flow through entities work and how their taxation would work to potentially eliminate any double tax now, and see how it grows, and then go from there.
Well, Warren, I really appreciate the time today. I know it's a dense topic, but it could save people millions of dollars. We want to make sure that our community in Tech New Jersey and beyond understand the things they need to do to be set up for these longer term success stories, and be able to maximize their impact beyond once they've obtained some of this wealth. So really appreciate you sharing your wisdom today, and hope to have you back on the show sometime soon.
Great, of course. Thank you very much. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Lauren. Take care.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye-bye.